It's cold outside. I can't make it warm, right? We don't control the sun. But what I can do is put on a coat. I can put on gloves. I can put on a hat. And so what I've done is I've found a way to cope. I found a way to survive the weather, even though I can't control the weather. Does that make sense? I've found a way to stay dry, even when it's raining outside. That is what faith gives us. Faith gives us a way to stay inside a shelter, to stay dry, even when it's wet outside. And even when there are storms. So what kind of storms do we have here? We have tornadoes, right? Now, even if there was a tornado, even if I had severe weather outside, there is a way to protect myself. I can go into a basement. And so the reality is that even when we have storms hit us in life, if we learn certain skills, if we learn how to be inside of the proper shelter, we won't get destroyed. And so weather will come, weather will go, hardships will come, hardships will go, fitan, tests will come and tests will go, but we will survive. Does that make sense? And to survive a storm requires certain things that you have to do. To survive the weather that comes in your life, there are certain skills. And the reality is that if we are in the habit of staying within shelter, then we will be able to survive our storms. The question becomes, how do I stay within shelter? And moreover, how do I build a shelter? Okay, I like to use this example because we all know the story and we all, I think it's very illustrative. So the story of the three little pigs goes like this, yeah? There are three little pigs. One is really lazy, and one is sort of lazy, and one is not lazy. He works hard, okay? So the lazy one builds a very weak shelter. The lazy one builds a shelter out of something like straw or something. And so this house is not very strong. Then you have the next pig, and this pig is not quite as lazy, so he builds his house out of twigs or something like that, okay? And then you have the third pig. The third pig is working hard. So the third pig builds a strong shelter, puts in the time to make that shelter out of brick, all right? So now what happens is you have the big bad wolf come, yeah? And now the big bad wolf, does everyone know what he does? He huffs and he puffs. You know there's teachers in the room when you know exactly what the big bad wolf does, right? So he huffs and he puffs and he blows the first house down. And the reason why is because it was very weak. And then the next house, he huffs and he puffs and he blows that one down because it was also weak. But what happens with the third shelter, the one made of brick? The third shelter, he huffs and he puffs, but he can't blow it down. Why? Because it was solid, it was strong. Now here in life, we have all types of big bad wolves, okay? We have some that look like Trump. We have some that look like financial problems. We have some that look like different kinds of trials. So what we have in life is we have different things that come and huff and puff at us and try to do what? Blow our house down. Blow our house down. To break us down. To make us, to basically destroy us or to make us weak. And the reality is we can't stop the wind. We can't. We can't actually stop a wolf from doing what wolves do. What do wolves do? They huff and they puff. But what we can do is build a strong shelter. You understand what I'm saying? So now the question I get to, or the point that I'm getting to, is how do we build a strong shelter in life? How do we can't be, delusional and think that the sun is always going to be out in life, right? We can't be delusional and say, well, in my life, it'll just never rain. Because if we are that way, it's like, I read this quote recently and it said that if a person only travels when the sun is out, they won't ever end up at their destination. And the truth is that we have to keep going in life even when it's not perfect, when life is not perfect, when things are difficult. So the question becomes, how do we build that strong shelter made of brick? yeah, and be able to handle the weather of life. Fair enough? So this is the reason why I chose this topic. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to just give you guys 4 pieces of advice, all right? And within those 4 pieces of advice, there's going to be sub-advice. Cool? So to begin with, I want to tell you this, and that is, there is something within our power that has a very profound effect on our life, on our psychological state, and on our spiritual state, and on our emotional state. And that is something called focus. Focus. And this is something I emphasize a lot, and I will emphasize again. What you focus on grows. So whatever you focus on in your life is going to actually start to grow. And when it grows, it starts to become bigger, and it also starts to surround you. Okay? So let me give you an example. There are some people, and their habit is that they focus on problems. Okay? And sometimes it's not for any bad intent, but it's because that's just the way they're designed. They are problem focused. And sometimes, ironically, it's because they're problem solvers. You guys understand what I mean? So some people are very problem solve. Their orientation is problem solving. Now, a problem solving orientation sometimes tends to then look for the problem in any situation so as to what? Solve it. These are the people who then you might later on say, oh, they're so critical. But the reality is they're looking for the problem so they can solve it. Do you guys understand what I mean? Now, what happens with this, and this is the subtle issue, yeah, is that when you focus on problems in a situation, see, there's no situation that's ever going to be perfect, is there? Are you ever going to have a perfect situation in this life? No, it goes against the definition of dunya. Dunya, by definition, is imperfect. Everyone with me? So there's always going to be a problem. There's never going to be a perfect situation. So, but if you focus on the problem in every situation, here's what happens to it. It starts to look bigger than it is. And it will actually start to consume you. Everything that you talk about will be the problem. Everything that you think about will be that problem. Everything that maybe you post about will be about that problem. Everything you read about will be about that problem. Do you understand? And this actually becomes a pitfall that sometimes happens even to Islamic workers. So for example, an activist. An activist, mashallah, is working for a cause. And that's amazing work. But an activist has to also be careful because, for example, I'll give you an example. An activist who is fighting against Islamophobia, all right? So their work is extremely important, right? But if an activist who's fighting against Islamophobia only is reading about Islamophobia, only is talking about Islamophobia, only is posting about Islamophobia, only is discussing, you understand what happens? Do you know what happens to that person? It will start to affect them. And the reason it will start to affect them is because everywhere they're looking, everywhere they're thinking, everywhere, it's actually the focal point is a problem. Because Islamophobia is a problem, right? And racism these are problems. But what happens is if that becomes the focal point, the only focal point in that person's life, it will actually start to affect their emotional, spiritual, and psychological state. Because what happens is it will change the way you view the world. You'll notice, okay, put aside activism for 1 second. And let me re-emphasize, this is extremely important work. This isn't to say that this isn't something that's necessary. It is. But right now what I'm saying is something subtle, and that is that we have to be mindful, regardless of our work, of what our focus is. Okay? Our focus, we have to be mindful of what is our actual focal point. But putting that aside for a second, activism, just think for a moment about just a regular person, not necessarily an activist, but their entire conversations. Like, for example, every time something bad happens, or there's some sort of fitna, some sort of like calamity we're dealing with, or even as a community, and all of a sudden, every single conversation is just about that problem. Right? That's all they have on their news feed. That's all they talk about. That's all they're posting about. Does anyone know, how does that person start to feel? Or maybe it's you. How do you start to feel? what ends up happening is you actually start to feel weighed down, and what will happen is almost a person like who's only having that as surrounding them will start to easily fall into despair. And moreover, it changes the way you view the world. So now if the only thing you're reading about is hate crimes, okay, that's it. That's day and night you're reading about hate crimes. Day and night you're talking about hate crimes. Day and night you're posting about it. What you're gonna do is almost like you're seeing the world in a negative way. And so you will maybe you'll feel that people are more antagonistic towards Muslims than they actually are. And that's because it skews the way you view your reality. So then what's the balance? Because you might say, well, okay, well, what are we supposed to do? Are we just supposed to dig our heads in into the sand and pretend that this isn't happening? And my answer is no, absolutely we don't dig our heads into the sand and pretend this isn't happening. But again, and I emphasize this, it's about your focal point. Yes, we should be aware. Yes, we should be active. But make sure that your focal point is not the problem itself. That your focal point, and I'll give you an example of what I mean. When Musa alayhi salam is standing in front of the Red Sea, right? And he has an army behind him, and he's got a very serious problem, okay? He's got a giant body of water in front of him, and he's got an army behind him, and he looks trapped. But what was his focal point in that moment? Anyone? Allah. Do you see the difference? It's not that he was in denial of his reality. His reality was that he's got an army behind him and he's got Red Sea in front of him. But his focus was not on the Red Sea, and his focus was not on the army. And in fact, you see the contrast between him and Bani Israel. Because Bani Israel were focused on the army. فَلَمَّا تَرَاءَ الْجَمْعَانِ قال أصحاب موسى إنا لمدركون. That when the armies, the groups saw each other. So you have Bani Israel, the children of Israel, seeing the army. When they saw each other, the people of Musa alayhi salam, Bani Israel, what do they say? What's their response? Because what's their focus? Their focus is on their army, right? We're doomed. And that was their response. Inna lamudrakun. Indeed, we will be overtaken. They fell into despair. And the reason they fell into despair, it was because of their focus. Make sense? Inna lamudrakun, they said. And then Allah tells us what Musa alayhi salam says. Qala kalla. You see like a complete contrast. Qala kalla. He said no. And kalla in Arabic is a very emphatic, no way, absolutely not. It's all of that in just one word. Kalla. Inna ma'aya rabbi sayahdeen. Indeed, my Lord is with me and He will guide me through. Musa alayhi salam wasn't looking at the problem. He was aware of the problem, folks. He's not like in denial. He's aware of the problem, but his focus wasn't the problem. His focus was Allah. Do you see the difference? His focus was Allah. And he said, Inna ma'aya rabbi sayahdeen. Indeed, my Lord is with me and He will guide me through this. He will get me through this. So no matter how dark it gets outside, or no matter how much we feel like things are closing in on us, if our focal point is Allah, then we don't feel despair. Do you see the difference? It's because you know, just like Musa alayhi salam knew that Allah was with him. And if Allah is with you, it means what? He'll get you through. And that was the yaqeen and the tawakkul and the trust of Musa alayhi salam. But believe me, it cannot happen unless you have the right focus. If he were to focus instead on how big the Red Sea is, just that, he's gonna be like, have the exact same reaction as Bani Israel. If his focal point was on how powerful Pharaoh is, he wouldn't be able to have that reaction. But Musa alayhi salam was trained. His heart was focused on Allah. Kalla, inna ma'aya rabbi sayahdeen. Indeed, my Lord is with me and He will guide me through this. And Allah did exactly that. Allah told him, strike the sea, and Allah opened the sea for him. This is a lesson for us. This is a timeless lesson for us. That if your focus is Allah, He can get you out of every situation. He will save you. But it has to be, it's really about us, about where is our trust? Where do we place our trust? See, tawakkul, this concept of relying on Allah, it can't happen unless we have the right focus, right? You can't have trust in Allah if your focus is on other than Allah. Simple as that. But if your focus is on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then no matter what situation you're in, and you're aware of it, but you're not afraid. Because what did I say at the beginning? What you focus on does what? What you focus on grows. There's a reason Allah told us to pray not once or twice or even 3 times, but 5 times a day. What is that doing? It's making us focus on Allah. It's shifting our focus away from whatever work we happen to be doing at the moment, whatever problem we happen to be in. You see, no matter what your situation is, you still need to turn and pray. You know what that means? Do you know what that does? It means that you're at work, you leave your work and you focus on Allah. It means you're at the mall, you leave that sale and you focus on Allah. You're on your laptop, you're on your phone, you leave that phone, you leave that laptop, you leave that Facebook, you leave that meeting, you leave that class, whatever it is, and you focus on Allah. Allah's training us to focus on Him and not on whatever it is that we're doing in the dunya. It's to shift our focus to Him. And this is training. This is training us. This is what Musa alayhi salam, he went through this training, right? And because he had that training, when he was down faced with a problem. Now he's faced with a problem. What are we going to do when we're faced with a problem? And he was able to put his full reliance on Allah. Why? Because he was focused on Allah. قَالَ كَلَّا إِنَّ مَعِيَ رَبِّي سَيَهْدِينِ. Okay, so we talk about focus. Now, the second thing I want to say, before I move on. So in terms of focus, how do I have the right focus? How can I have the right focus? Number one is what I expose myself to, okay? Let me just say this. Let me give you an example. You know the dua, how many of you have ever been to the Kaaba? Okay, when you're in the Kaaba, you learn that the sunnah is that for the entire last part of the tawaf, what dua are you supposed to say? رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. Oh Allah, give us in this life good, and give us in the hereafter good, and protect us from the hellfire. Do you notice in this dua there's 3 parts? There's 3 parts, yeah? Now, out of those 3 parts, how many are about dunya? 1, right? رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا. You don't forget it, you have it there. You have the first part about dunya, but then the second part is about the hereafter. And what's the third part about? The hereafter. Where is Jahannam? In the hereafter. So you notice that even in this dua, where is the focus? The focus is more on akhirah than it is on dunya, right? So the reality is that Allah doesn't tell us to forget about dunya completely, but Allah is showing us where our primary focus should be. Our bigger focus is on Allah in the hereafter. Okay, so if I do that, if I expose myself to, see, it has to do with what am I exposing myself to. I'll tell you something just practical. Facebook, okay? Facebook is nothing more than a tool, just like the internet, just like a phone. It can be used for good or it can be used for evil. Fair enough? Same with the internet. Like, you know what I mean? All these Islamic lectures, they're on the internet. There's also a lot of filth on the internet too, right? So the idea is that these are tools. These are tools. Facebook is a tool. One thing I'll tell you that I've learned is that look at your news feed once in a while. Look at your news feed. The content of your news feed actually says a lot. And it affects you. I'll tell you why. Because the reality is we use social media. We're on our social media. And when we're on our social media, you have a news feed you have a feed for Facebook and you have a feed for Instagram and for Twitter, etc. If you just look at the content, it'll give you an idea of what you're ingesting. Make sense? For example, you want to know what you're eating? Maybe open up your fridge, right? It's going to show you the quality of what you're eating. You want to know what, look at your plate before you eat. That's what's going in, yeah? Now, if that food is covered in mold, you open the fridge and all the food is rotten, or the food on your plate is rotten, and then you eat it, what's going to happen to you inside? It doesn't take a doctor. Y'all are going to get sick, right? Because why? Because the quality of your food is bad. You're actually ingesting toxins. You're ingesting poison. Mold is poisonous. It will harm you internally. It's the same thing with your feed, with your news feed, with your Facebook news feed, with the articles you're reading, with the posts you're looking at, your Instagram, who you follow on Instagram. It's like looking at your plate before you eat it. How's the quality? Because that stuff is being ingested. It's being ingested in a different way. It's going through your eyes, and then it's going into your heart and your mind. So what you're actually doing is you're feeding your soul. And that's actually more important than even your body, because the food that you put into your soul, it stays there. The food you put into your body goes into the toilet, okay? The food that you're taking into your soul affects your soul. Your soul is something that's like eternal. You understand? It's something that's gonna go and live forever, eventually, right? You go from this life, you go into the grave, and then from the grave you go into hellfire, or you go into paradise. So this soul is actually staying with you. You understand? And so the quality of the food that you're giving your soul is pretty important. And that's what it is. It's what you read, it's what you look at, it's what you look at on TV, on billboards, on magazines, on your Facebook, on your Instagram. All of that is food. Think of that as food. Look at the quality of it. Ask yourself, is this healthy food? Is this organic and raw and all that stuff? Or is it covered in poison? Is it mold? Okay? And when you start to clean up your food, it cleans up your soul. That's just practical advice. One thing that I've learned is that you can make your news feed actually healthy. You know that? There's this thing called unfollow, folks. Yeah? There's something called unfollow. They don't have to know. You know what I mean? You don't have to unfriend them unless you want to. But you can unfollow and nobody knows. If somebody is posting garbage, or just like they ate a burger and then they ate a different kind of burger and that's it. That's okay. So there's ranges of different kinds of food, okay? There's absolute poison, I get it. And then there's amazing healthy food, but then there's something in between which is just useless. And I'll tell you this, even overeating useless food, or even if it's neutral but you overeat, and you're still gonna get unhealthy. So my point is this, you can make your social media healthy for you, where it's actually growing your head and your mind, and it's helping your heart, or you can just make it useless. Like, what did Kim Kardashian wear today? See, Instagram is one of these things where you have a whole range of things you can follow. Do you guys know what I'm saying? If you start out by cleaning up your Instagram, just clean it up, meaning look at who you're following and just clean it up. Instead of following just useless things, and I'm just gonna now put aside for a second the blatant fahsha. I'm just gonna put aside haram stuff for a second, because it's obvious, okay? Let me just tell you this, whatever you take into your eyes, it's gonna affect your heart. It's the same thing as drinking poison. It's gonna affect your body. That's just a fact. So I'm gonna put aside haram for a second, and now I'm just gonna look at uselessness. Just complete useless info, okay? Useless, input, all right? Now, this seems innocent. It might, okay, every single person you're following is a fashionista. Awesome, okay. But the problem with that is that becomes your focal point, and then you know what? That becomes what you care about most. And that's actually dangerous. The reason why, so this might say, okay, so what? It's not haram, okay? But the problem is, what is our concern? What is our greatest concern in life? One of the issues I've found is that depending on, especially now with like social media blowing up, yeah? What's happened is now, even more than before, we are obsessed with appearances. Obsessed with appearances. What does that mean? It means that like how I look, how I dress, how I appear becomes of utmost importance, more than anything else. And that in and of itself isn't healthy, okay? Because what it's done is it's skewed what's really important. And now it's how I look. You know what I mean? It's like everything is like, you gotta look perfect. You gotta pretend you're perfect. Now there's an obsession with perfection. You know what I mean? If you have anything that's imperfect about you, put a filter on it, right? And there's like filters, but then there's also like filters. You know, like even in life, we're just all wearing masks. We're just pretending. And this is a very unhealthy, because what we've done is we've completely missed the point of what really matters. We've missed the point. And that's not innocent. That's actually killing our hearts. One of the things that you'll find is that there's a few things that can kill the heart. There's a few things that can kill the heart. One of them is sins. That's clear, okay? But there's something else that can kill the heart. And that is something called ghafla. Does anybody know what ghafla is? Ghafla is just heedlessness. It means that, okay, I might not be involved in sin, I might not be clubbing and drinking and all this, but I am completely, I've missed the plot. Like all I care about is fashion, what this person's wearing, what that person's saying, what this person, you know, I'm going to this party, are you going to that? Like, it's just, I've actually killed my heart, because not necessarily through outright sin, but because all I care about is superficial things. I'm missing what really matters. And that's just as dangerous. That's just as dangerous. Because think of a person, see, there's two ways to die. Or basically, you can eat poison and die, right? We already talked about poison. But I can also just starve, and that will also kill me, right? If I starve, I'll also die, yeah? So when a person isn't getting the remembrance of Allah, and instead the only thing that they're taking in is dunya, like, you know, things about that have to do with money and fashion and status and celebrities and blah, 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 right? All that's it. So then what's happening is it's like I'm starving my soul. Get it? Because I'm not giving my soul its actual food, which is the remembrance of Allah. Makes sense? And as a result, I may not be dying from poison, but I'm dying from starvation. And that's ghafla. Ghafla is a person who is heedless, and so they're not taking in what they need for your soul to be healthy and alive. It's like a person deprived of oxygen. Okay? Because the oxygen of the heart and the soul is the remembrance of Allah. And I don't have that in my life because I'm so full with fashion. I'm just full. I don't got no space, you know? That's it. That's what fills my head. That's what fills my heart, or money, or status, or power, or whatever it is that I'm obsessed with. And because that's all I'm full with, I don't actually have space to take in oxygen and actual food. So if that makes sense, it's very, very important what we ingest. Just think of it as food, okay? Food or oxygen. The other thing that I want to emphasize is managing thoughts. Managing thoughts. One of the things that we have to realize is we have a nafs. A nafs is our lower self, right? And we have shaitan. And the nafs whispers and shaitan whispers. And so not everything that occurs to our brain is healthy. And some of it's just garbage. Just complete garbage. So we have to be very careful about our thoughts. Managing the thoughts. If you don't manage the thoughts, it's sort of like you're in your house and you just like, you know, it's nighttime and you're getting ready to go to sleep. You have your family, you have valuable things in the house, but you leave the front door wide open. You leave the windows wide open. And then robbers come in and you're like, wait, what happened? Well, whose fault is it? You left the front door open. You left the windows open, so a robber came in and took stuff that you care about. This is the problem with our mind. If we don't put, we don't guard our mind, our thoughts, and we don't guard our heart, then what happens is we are leaving it open to all these different suggestions. Suggestions of shaitan, suggestions of the nafs. And this will have a very poisonous impact on the condition of our hearts and the condition of our minds. Because shaitan is there pouring filth in our mind, and he will put lots of negative thoughts in our head. If we entertain these thoughts, it's like, so the robber comes in because you left the door open, and then guess what? You say, hey, have a seat. Have a seat, have some food. You know what I'm saying? Stay for a while. That's pretty insane, right? But that's what we do with these shaitani thoughts. Negative thoughts. Thoughts about Allah. Even negative thoughts about yourself. Don't think that you're holy because you're hating on yourself. That's not righteousness to have self-hate. Self-hate is actually from shaitan. I'm going to repeat that. Self-hate is from shaitan. These deprecating thoughts about yourself, that's not from Allah. That's actually shaitan, because shaitan knows that if you hate yourself, then you're not even going to have the energy to want to worship Allah or repent or anything. Because hating on yourself is like beating yourself. If someone's beat up, where's going to be their energy to do anything? They're going to become totally, paralyzed. And so self-hate, these deprecating, these thoughts, these bad thoughts about yourself, they're also shaitani. That also needs to be blocked. Those things need to be, don't allow those in. And then once they come in, you give it a place that you give these thoughts, you engage them, you even feed them. That's like taking a robber and feeding him, Like, here, have some food, get stronger. Stay a while, here's a room, here's a guest room, go ahead and stay the night. No, you don't let these things in, you block these thoughts. A thought that is self-hating or a negative thought about Allah or about any of these negative thoughts, do not entertain them. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Replace them with positive thoughts. Do not feed negative thoughts. Realize that your brain, your mind, your thoughts, the suggestions that go into your heart, guard it like you guard your house. Guard it. You know what I mean? Keep it clean in there. Don't allow a robber come throw filth inside your house. Okay? So that's very, very important in staying positive. It's extremely important. What you think about, what you see, what you read, what you ingest. So far, what have I said? I've said just like with your body, what you eat, yeah? Same thing. What you're ingesting of data, things that you're reading, things that you're seeing, things that you're listening to. Manage these things just like you manage. If you want to be healthy, you manage what you eat. Okay? Same thing. And you don't starve. Don't only be looking at things that are useless. Okay? Because then you're not feeding your soul the food that's keeping it alive. And that's through the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So make sure that your diet is good, what you're ingesting, what you're taking in is good, and also make sure that you're not letting in these poisonous thoughts. Guard your house, your heart and your mind.
وأكون للخير العميم مثالا